So a lot has happened since we were here last. I don't know. It's only been a week. Yes. But as we release this, I'm not sure how much time will be in between the 2 episodes, but we really got into it, but we've really been getting into it as a team. So many things are happening with 4 students. Some big things will have happened, I guess as we're releasing this. By the time this is released, who knows what we'll have done. But we had our first citywide event even in between. So we'll talk about that in the future and how exciting that is. Yeah, some really cool stuff. But personally, I replaced my daughter's alternator this morning in her car. And so I feel like a badass, to be honest, right now. Like
you can do anything.
That makes you a badass,
for sure. I feel like I can do anything almost. But yeah, YouTube is incredible. Like watching these videos step by step.
Think about how much money that saved you.
Oh gosh, right? Like the alternator is like $180.
Just for the part?
Just for the part. But that's the only thing I had to buy. Right. I happen to have enough tools where I just jumped in and did it. So that was really cool. So, cool. It would have been, I don't know how much. Maybe I'll look it up.
I love when things like that happen.
I know. So I have my daughter's car is running and she's going to be so pumped because yesterday when it died, okay, imagine this. She's pulling out of her parking lot at high school. As soon as she pulls out onto the road, it dies right out. So all these cars are behind her.
Oh, gosh.
And so she calls me and she's not happy. I'll say that. Yep. She's feeling like she is losing it.
Too.
And she's calling me and she's saying she doesn't know what to do. And then before I'm talking her through it, trying to be present and compassionate. And then before I know it, she's like, Gavin's pulling up behind me, one of her friends.
Aww.
And then I found out the whole tennis team came running off the tennis courts that are nearby and they pushed her car off of the side of the road.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then she got a ride home. Then we got it towed to the house last night. And yeah.
I love that.
And so
I don't love
we have a working car now, not even 24 hours later, which is really cool. And just $180 and dirty fingernails is it. So I'm pumped. So that happened. What about for you guys? Is anything happen in your world before we jump into the second half of the story?
I think, I've just been very busy with 4 students' life.
Yeah.
Since we've been here last. Dane and I cleaned out our garage.
Okay.
Literally pulled every item out. And then put it back in a nice, beautiful way. And so we walk outside to go and experience the clean. I'm like, can you just go take this to the garage fridge?
And then it's like, look at it.
That's such a good feeling.
Fun.
That is
a
really
grown-up
cool
thing.
That is a grown-up thing.
It was so bad.
I don't know. I think when people clean their rooms or if they pull everything out of their closet and clean it, there's you get that old band, the old woman
satisfaction in that.
Yeah.
It took us 7 hours.
Oh my gosh.
I know. It was crazy.
And nobody even really sees that except for you guys.
Yeah.
And all your neighbors when they drive by and your garage is up.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So now it's all crispy in there.
It's perfect. Ding. We'll see how long it stays.
Yeah, it lasts, yeah.
Womp womp.
What about you, Whit?
Oh, we've done, a lot of 4 student stuff this week.
Mm-hmm. And more coming. We got a couple more events this week.
Through.
I know.
It's Tuesday.
It's only Tuesday.
Recording on a Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
But big, really cool. Events tomorrow at one of our partner schools, events the next day at one of our partner schools. Cool stuff. Planning for our donor dinner coming up. Lots of cool things.
Yeah.
They're all fun. We did agree that all individually,
all of the things
they're all really fun. Put together,
when
it
you
can
stack
be.
Them,
Yes. Suddenly it's like, oh, wow.
But that's okay.
Yeah. Law of diminishing returns.
At least we like each other.
We really do.
That's so true.
Yeah. We are so fortunate. I think we mentioned that last time, how our spouses are like, yeah, we know. You work with all your buddies. And we do. So, when we were wrapping up last time, and it was just, it kind of, unfortunately, had to come to kind of an abrupt end. I felt like we had to kind of rush through the end of that. But to catch people up really quickly, you had kind of given us a little bit of the story of you and Kevin, your husband. You had talked about your 3 amazing boys and what it was like raising them. And then seeing, kind of the first signs or whatever with your oldest Tyler as he went off to school and found out, after the fact that he had been really suffering, feeling isolated for over a month, while he had been away, just a few hours away at school. and then you guys had brought him home, you'd gotten him in treatment, all of that. And then I think, we left, it was right after we all lost, and you guys obviously most acutely lost Tyler. And I think I think the things that Kelly and I were saying and that we were curious about, I'm sure people listening are curious about is, and we didn't want to rush through it, like grief is just so different for everybody. And like the way you were experiencing it, not to just jump right. I mean, I guess there's no other way. If we're going to start the story and pick up where we left off, we're jumping in the deep end of the pool right here from the get-go. Mm-hmm. But you're experiencing grief. Kevin is experiencing it in his way. Your youngest, Hayden, is experiencing it in a way. And then, Maddie D, your middle, is too. And so I think we had you say, like, what did you learn or what? I'm trying to remember exactly, but would you kind of just pick up there if you don't mind? I mean, I hate for you to kind of start right in literally the deepest, darkest part of your grief. But we had his celebration of life ceremony. And then it gets kind of quiet after all of the people who have been visiting and have all been there and trying to support you. And, and your closest friends just continue coming around, obviously, as they always do and did. But kind of what was going on there? How were you grieving? How was your family grieving? Because we kind of alluded, and we were just talking about all this stuff we're doing as an organization. It didn't stay there. Here we are 7 years later. But take us back, like, how was everybody dealing with that at that time?
Yeah. I mean, I would say based on our personalities, we were all dealing with it differently. That's for sure. We've got some stuffers in our family. We've got some, I definitely probably am more a combination. I'm going to stuff it at times, and other times I'm going to be, I'm a fixer. So I would oscillate between the two. But yeah, I would say the first several years, the first year was the hardest, because it was the first time doing things without Tyler.
A whole bunch of firsts.
Yes, a whole bunch of firsts. So that whole first year, literally to the anniversary of us losing him, it was, I can't even remember, to be honest with you, a lot of it. It was just a matter of putting our head down and getting through all the firsts. Sure. And they were all very hard. Yeah. Very hard.
And I know that did you start seeing a therapist? I mean, you already had, gosh. Your family was comfortable with therapy already, but had you already, were you seeing someone already, and were you seeing them regularly? And what was that relationship like? What were they telling you if you were seeing someone?
Yeah. So I wasn't seeing someone at the time, but I immediately, within the first week, everyone started seeing someone within the first week. Okay. It was just one of those.
This has become a priority now. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And thank God, too, you had the resources for everyone to be able to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
It
was, everybody within that first week started talking to someone, and everybody had someone different that they talked to, which was, I think, helpful.
Yeah.
Everyone needed somebody different. So, yes, I started talking to somebody, and I talked to her probably weekly. Maybe for that first year. Yeah. It was, she and I became very close. She was in the nitty-gritty of all the things, and I would cry on her couch.
Every time. Yeah.
Every time. But it is how I got through, for sure.
But what's interesting is that, and this therapist wasn't trying to be negative, but it's interesting because we've had some conversations about what was your therapist telling you then? And there was something, there was a couple of things that this person was just sharing statistics with you.
Yes, and I will say, my therapist didn't ever do that.
Oh, okay.
My personal one, I did meet with some people in the suicide space.
Okay.
That I did get some of that statistics and
what were those?
Yeah, share that, because that's the part that was like, whoa, like this is crazy to hear.
So it was, I mean, I can't tell you exactly what she said because I don't remember it, but I can tell you how I feel and how I felt walking out. And I felt like my other 2 children were going to die by suicide. My husband and I were going to get divorced. We were going to all become alcoholics. I just remember walking away from this particular situation not in a good place.
Well, I just, because I remember hearing, because you shared that with me.
Yes.
Way back when. And I just remember thinking, wow, this person was obviously trying, they were meaning well. I think it sounded like they didn't want you to be surprised, but hey,
Yes.
Whitney, just statistically speaking, people who lose a child, period, whether it's by suicide or any other way, marriages often
Yes.
don't last, et cetera. And then suicidality, it does in families, statistically speaking, like it can, other people, you can lose other people to suicide within family groups. And it's just wild. And so this person was sharing that stuff
I think
with
if
you.
I heard that now,
Yes, 7 years later.
7 years later, and even 1 year later,
Yeah.
I think it would have hit me differently than it did. It was the first couple weeks that I heard that, and I think that's what made it so difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah, that is. And horrible timing.
Terrible.
Yeah.
And if I had a relationship,
Right.
if it was someone that I had a relationship with and that was working with me regularly, this just happened to be a situation where
That was not
that was not
helpful.
the case, and it wasn't helpful. And others I understand that others may need that and find that helpful. So I don't
sure.
want to.
But for you,
For
you
me,
left
that
feeling
was very
horrible.
difficult.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to hear and process that early in my grief journey.
Right. Yeah.
I think you mentioned last time that you kind of immediately jumped into the exploration phase of like within months you were at a conference and all of that stuff. So that is kind of how you jumped into, like, you wanted to understand.
Yes.
Yeah. Information. I do remember that. That's right. You were, if I had more information, this would help.
Yes.
Like if I could wrap my head around this thing that you can't wrap your head around,
Right.
then I could get through this quicker, faster, like in a bit more healthy way. But
And I remember a light bulb moment. It's funny that you say that. I remember sitting at a conference and hearing this PhD student, maybe, I don't remember, speaking about kind of this continuum of suicide and that we are wired on this continuum somewhere from a place where your mind won't even go there. Like suicide would never be something that, and I dare to say that that's where my mind has always been. Like it's just not, my mind couldn't even comprehend it to a place where it comes very naturally.
For individuals,
For
you're
individuals,
saying.
yes. For
Everyone
individuals.
falls in a
Everyone
different
falls
place.
in a different place.
okay.
And I remember, so some people, it just can,
Their mind will go there more quickly,
yes,
is what you're saying.
Yes. I think that's kind of what I took away from this man's talk. And it really helped me in thinking, okay, no wonder I'm having such a hard time. Like I am obviously at this end and my mind doesn't even go there. So it's really hard for me to.
It's not that you're being oblivious or looking past it.
Yes.
It's that you aren't wired that way.
It's that I'm not wired that way. It was a light bulb, and
interesting.
I'm not explaining it well, but it was an interesting light bulb moment for me.
Yeah, well, it kind of probably helped you. Like, this is why I can't understand this, because my brain doesn't take me there. I don't go there.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure that circumstances or whatever, like wherever you are on the spectrum, some people would get there more quickly, and while you may never get there, depending on circumstances, who knows how vulnerable people might be, or
It
whatever.
helped
It
me
might even
realize there are people that this is your mind going there is not far-fetched. It's not this outside of the norm kind of
be. Yeah.
thing.
And it's interesting. I mean, that's another reason. I mean, not for this specifically, but we, with our students at our events, one of the things we're always trying to pitch and kind of help students understand is know yourself. Like, the more you know about who you are, your own predispositions, all of that stuff, the better equipped you are and more you can pre-manage going into any situation. Interesting. So you are there, you're trying to get information. What was the tipping point, or what was maybe the thing that obviously was really helpful or was a light bulb moment for you? Any other light bulb moments? And then I want to move towards what was the tipping point where it became outward, like it became action at some point.
Yeah, well, and I think that it was all happening kind of at the same time.
Okay.
I wanted to figure it out for myself, but I wanted to ultimately figure it out to be able to make sure that I could do something so that less families found themselves in the position that we were in, if that makes sense. so that was why I wanted to learn so that I could bring knowledge or education or to the next generation, that generation of students, so that their parents never had to sit in the seat that I was sitting in. And that happened relatively quickly. I just didn't know how to do it.
Sure.
So that was the educational piece. Like, I needed to learn more, and I needed to see what was being done. I figured my whole thought process, and this was a couple years later, was someone's got to be doing a great job preparing students in this space of mental wellness. So I'm just going to go and find them and learn what they're doing and bring it back to the students that I know, whose lives I'm a part of. That was my dream.
So before you even got to that dream, I know that you told, in our last episode that you were a teacher early on and all of that. Are you and I know this about you, but I think for people listening, are you a helper by nature? Because I think not everyone would just make that natural transition from, I've had this, one of the most tragic losses a person can imagine. And now I am moving into, I need to help people not experience this. Not everybody, that isn't the natural transition for a lot of people. They would sit and understandably sit in the pain and trying to figure out, how do I make this pain go away? How do I deal with this? How do I rebuild my life? You know what? I could just easily see that being the case. And
that's definitely a personality thing. Like, I know you well, and that makes sense that you would jump to, like, the fixer. You said it just a few minutes ago. You're a fixer, and so you jumped in straight into action.
I did. Yeah. And I think that is my wiring.
Yeah.
Like, and that comes from, that's my mom's wiring. That's that's all I've ever seen.
So before we jump into your dream, part of the journey out of just pain and out of just suffering and into action and like becoming, I don't know, focusing just outward, I think is what it ends up, as I've watched you through these 7 years. You're meeting with other people who have experienced loss. Like, people are like, oh my gosh, like, I know a person who I work with, or they live in my neighborhood, or they go to my tennis club or whatever, and they just lost their child to suicide, or they just lost somebody. You need to meet with my friend Whitney. And so you started sitting with a bunch of people too. And so that even started manifesting before it became an organized effort. You just were meeting with people. Anything that you would say to people who know someone who is experiencing loss or may find themselves in that grief, what did you find to be helpful for those people? What was helpful for you before we move on to like what your actions became?
I think just the knowledge that everyone's grief journey and everyone's story is different. So being able to just sit and listen to someone's story and not fix, because there is no fixing, especially someone that's lost a child, or someone that's lost anyone. I mean, at that point, there's no fixing. It's just sitting and listening. But it was, I think it was in spending time with other parents in similar situations to mine that made me realize, like, this is a bigger problem than the world currently thinks it is. And we have to do something about it, because this is devastating. Yeah.
And I can remember sitting with you early on, and I'm trying to understand as well as you're learning, because you also started going to conferences and things like that. So you're gathering information, you're sitting with people who have experienced this type of loss. And I'm like, so what are the statistics? And we were having that conversation about how skewed and how, inaccurate our statistics are. Would you, that just hit me, would you explain that really quickly? Like, why the statistics are so hard to get, good data on this?
Yeah, and I'm not going to do it justice.
Sure.
Because I don't know the exact numbers and I don't know all the things. But I know that going to these conferences, there was always a breakout on statistics or on like data collection. And there were some interesting studies done in other countries. One of them being, I can't even remember what it was, but this particular country, all of a sudden their suicide statistics jumped this massive amount, and everyone was trying to figure out why. Like, what caused this? What is happening in this country? And what they realized was that all of a sudden they created a new kind of norm for documenting suicides. So all of a sudden, they were being documented and looked into at a different level, and that is why their statistics raised so much in 1 year. And I feel like
that it was that way the whole time.
It was that way the whole time. They just
weren't
documenting it properly.
Reporting it as suicide.
Yes.
It'd be like a gun death, or it was an overdose or something like that. Accidental death.
Yes.
Instead of saying this was someone who took their own life.
Yes.
Wow, that's crazy.
So I think the statistics are, and I still hear about it today. I still hear stories from people of it wasn't labeled a suicide. We know it was, and it wasn't labeled a suicide. And there's things with universities and,
Well, sure. And even in a family's personal loss,
yes,
they don't want to necessarily report it as a suicide or people to know.
Yeah,
it
the
feels so
stigma
private.
around it is still so...
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
It's there, and I understand it. It's an interesting... It's all part of the things that I learned.
Right. So you started not only like meeting with people, and then you started, as you're meeting with these people, you're like, something has to be done. And so this is when the data collection part happened, and you started traveling the country looking for this. Who's doing this really, really well?
Yes.
And so really quickly, like, where all did you go? Gosh. How would you hear about these places where you would just show up? Because I've heard this story so many times. I'm like, how did she even know to go to these places?
Like literally when I went, there was something on the Today Show about a school up in Detroit. Mm-hmm. So I went to Detroit.
So, but you reach out to them, like you send them an email or call them or something?
Sent them an email and said, hey, I heard about this program that you're doing. I'd love to just come in and chat with someone about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're like, yeah, please come. We're super proud of this. Come on up.
Yep. And that's exactly what, we'd love to show. We'd love for you to learn. It was Detroit, California, Florida, Georgia. I'm forgetting some.
Yeah. I mean, it's been 5-6 years now. So
yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. So you're going all around. You're hearing about these programs.
Yep.
What do you hear?
And I would go into a school. I would meet with the principal, and they would say, yes, we have this great program that we're doing. Our teachers love it. Our students love it. They're well prepared. Here, let me let you talk to a teacher. And I would go and I would sit with a couple teachers, and they would say, well...
The principal's left the room at this point.
Yes, the principal has left.
They can speak freely.
When the principal leaves the room, it's I agree, our students need this. This is very important. But I'm a math teacher, and I don't feel comfortable having some of these conversations. This is not my wheelhouse. This is not my strength. So I don't do this as well as I should, or all the way to like, we don't do that in my group.
Right.
So most of these curriculums were given to a school. School is, it's getting down to teachers, and teachers have the responsibility of doing this in some kind of an advisory or so. And I'm sure there are some that did it really well.
Sure. People who are passionate about it.
We're just looking at when you've got, 150 teachers. Some are going to do it great, and some are not going to do it not so great.
Sure.
So then you would get to the students, and most of the time when I sat with the students, they would say, I don't even know what you're talking about. We don't do that.
He just lets us do a homework in my advisory.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. That's exactly.
I was a teacher for 12 years. I know how this goes.
Yes. That was so I heard that time and time and time again. So I realized after some time, the thing that it can't be just putting something in the hands of a school and assuming that they're going to do it well.
Right.
That's kind
all
of
well-meaning intentions.
Oh yeah, all these people are super.
But these people, like I think about specific classes like AP classes where it's literally down to the minute.
Yes.
Like you're not going to have time to go through a curriculum. Like there's just it's not the right process in order to get it to the students in the right way.
Yeah.
And I mean, having been in the classroom, and we never had any mental health initiatives that came through the schools I was teaching in, but we did have different things where we were doing a book, or there was like some talking points or something, and you try it a few times as a teacher, and it just like, you can tell there's something there, and I would try and make it more interesting or something like that, but it just wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't well designed enough, or it wasn't unique enough or specific enough for the kid to maintain attention, and you just kind of you get fatigue from trying to get kids to buy into this
Yes.
Yeah.
over time. And then eventually you're just, hey, this is the topic today. You know, this here's kind of the bottom line, the idea. Any thoughts about that? Okay, well, if you guys have homework to do, could you kind of jump in and get it done? Because I know you need this time.
Yeah.
And so it
It's
just
also
happens
just
like that.
mixed in with school.
Yeah.
Like when those two worlds overlap, it's harder to get students to buy into something because this is just another class. This is just another lecture.
Yeah.
It's the same that I've been doing for the last 4 hours already.
Right.
Yeah.
And then thinking from my perspective as a teacher, there were emails I needed to respond to, papers I needed to like get done because I knew I had a conference right after school, and so I wasn't going to have time to. So yeah, I mean, just all these pressures combined to kind of actually spoil or kind of get in the way of this potentially great thing, this curriculum or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. So after a while, what did you end up deciding? And what was happening too? Because while you're traveling around, that's just every, so often.
Yes.
The school where Tyler graduated from, you had started having communication with them. A garden was created on campus for Tyler. Some moms who were concerned that were in the community, you guys start meeting. So fill us in a little bit on what was happening here in Charlotte while you're learning all of this stuff.
So about at the same time I'm doing that, I am regularly meeting with a group of moms that see that this is something that we need to focus on and want to have conversations about what this could look like in our small independent school here in Charlotte.
Yeah.
So we start talking to the school about what that could look like, letting them know, like, this is important to us. And then COVID hits. And it just so happened that when COVID hit, it ended up the seniors at that school that year had 2 extra days that they didn't have anything happening. So the school knew that we were interested in doing something and said, hey, would you like a group of this group of seniors for 2 days?
Right at the end of the year.
Right at the end of the year. Yeah.
Because pre-COVID, they would have gone. It was like they went out into the community and did other things, so they couldn't do that because of COVID.
Exactly.
So it freed up their 2 days.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. That's exactly. So So yes, we basically were given a group of students for 2 days to really prepare them for that transition to college. That was really the idea.
Okay. College prep, kind of 2 days.
Was how do we, in a mental wellness capacity, help these students get ready for this transition? Because it truly was, I think, the transition that was so difficult for Tyler. So going back to that transition, so that's what we did. So we basically called in a group of experts and said, okay, what do these students need to hear? What does that look like? And they helped us create kind of a day-long conference kind of feel for this group of students. Yeah,
and I remember some of those experts, like you had therapists, I think you had medical doctors, like a pediatrician, I think was on that group. Like it was a super informed group of people. And because of this independent school, there are a lot of connections with professionals in the community because a lot of them had kids that had gone to this school or were going to the school. And so you all circle up and start, what are we going to do for these 2 days? Now, before we get into that, because that ends up being our first event ever, which is really cool and crazy. It wasn't just this event and this curriculum kind of that we were moving towards. You had already started doing something, again, just because you're a helper and because you were connected with students at this school through Tyler's relationships and younger siblings and things like that. Yep. Someone had reached out to you personally and just was a student and said, hey, can we talk, or would you be open to just kind of meeting for coffee or something like that, right? Yep. And so talk about, because that ends up becoming another, again, facet of what we do now. So what was that? Yeah. So that basically, I've always been a proponent of like strong community connections, the importance of having strong connections and vulnerable conversations amongst people. So just long story short, had literally one student that she and I just were friends. And over time, she asked to invite other friends, and we just started chatting. Every Sunday, we would spend an hour or two chatting, literally about life.
that friends were invited, and all of a sudden that was a group of like 10 students that would just get together every Sunday. And it was
your garage.
In my
your
garage.
That's
Yes.
a big
Because this is COVID
part.
still, like during COVID.
Yes, this is during
So you're
COVID.
social.
Yes,
we
this
all
is
remember our
during COVID.
circles when we would sit 6 feet apart in our
Yes.
circles
Yes.
with the garage door open
If it
or
was
outside.
nice enough, we would be outside.
That's awesome.
For sure.
Okay.
But yeah, literally we would, and it was just an authentic community. They were all from different kind of social circles.
Okay.
But it was just a place to show up, and you knew there were going to be people there to talk about what was going on in your life.
Yeah.
And before long, they said, what does it look like for every student should have this? Like this is important. Like we show up because this is important to us.
How long real quick before you move on, how long were they meeting by the time they said that?
I mean, it was probably almost a year.
Wow.
It was probably almost a year because we started meeting pre-COVID, and then COVID hit, and we just continued through.
So, I mean, you've had a lot. I mean, you're thinking like, if it's at least during the school year, I'm sure during summer or whatever, but let's say it's like at least 30 2-hour conversations with these kids,
Yes.
like once a week in a
Yes.
predictable space
Yep.
and all of that. Crazy. It takes a long time to build community.
It does.
That's just a
Yeah,
quick
it
note. That's one of
does.
my things I want to highlight there.
It does.
It's like
It takes a long time to create authentic community.
Yeah,
It
for
does.
sure, where you feel safe. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So this group, they started asking the question, what does it look like for others to be able to have places like this? And it was just a special group of kids that said, we want to do this at our school. We want to create this. And so we spent about the next 4 or 5 months just walking through like what that looks like, how they would go about creating it, and then pitching it to the admin at their school, which they did. And eventually it turned into what is now Students for Students, which is small groups in high schools where juniors and seniors are meeting with freshmen and sophomores weekly, at lunch, getting to know each other, talking about life, talking about, the things that they want to talk about.
That's so crazy and cool.
And there's so many people involved this year
Yeah.
for the leader training. Every year I'm shocked with how many people are involved, but I don't know. It just has grown so much, and it's super exciting.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I think as a team, like kind of just stepping back for a second and kind of going a little bit higher and looking at our organization. It's one of the things that I think we're most proud of because it's the thing that is spreading so easily. Like the
Yes.
students are sharing this information with their friends.
Yep.
They want their friends to experience this. And I think, again, because we just had our training and we had three different high schools at the training, but there's like 2 more high schools that we're already talking to about maybe bringing students to their school. Like these kids are just so excited. And I think we can all remember, man, how cool would it have been to have a senior or a junior who knew your name and
So cool.
as a freshman or a sophomore,
Right.
and that you got to meet with them regularly and you got to know about their life and they knew about yours and they show up at your games and you were like invited to the things they do and things outside of school.
It so quickly changes the culture of a school and
Gosh.
atmosphere when there's so many different connections outside of social, like cliques and all of those things.
Yep.
It's, I don't know. It
Yeah.
just creates such legit community.
Yeah. And then one of the fun things that has been kind of this kind of tertiary bonus of that is that those students had to figure out, what does leadership look like?
Mm-hmm.
How do you make something scalable?
Yep.
Which is another fascinating, because we're struggling as an organization. I think most organizations do. Like,
Yeah.
how do we grow this in a healthy way?
Yep.
So none of us are underwater, but this can can provide what it does for a few to more. And so you had them develop like communications teams and curriculum teams and all of these different teams that would, communicate with the administration and with parents and with students, and how do you get kids in groups and what do signups look like, and we do monthly trainings with them. I mean, it's become
so much experience.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, the leadership development part of it is just, it became this side thing that we didn't know would happen.
Right.
But it's been so fun to watch
Yeah.
the leadership development side of it. It's like they're running their own little small business.
Yeah.
There's just not finances
And then
involved.
beautifully, I think one of the things that we were hoping would happen, because the dream of every one of those groups is, I guess to try and sum it up well, is that every person who is involved like experiences authenticity and consistency, kindness, and community, and that we want them to become so comfortable, and I would even say addicted to community, that when they leave to go to wherever they go, they will never be comfortable again unless they have.
They have to find
They
it.
have to find community.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
And they are.
yeah.
Like to speak to those that,
Yeah.
I mean, now there's some that are
It's been going on for long enough.
graduating from
Yeah.
college. And when they come back and sit around my kitchen island on, when they drop in, that's one of the first questions I ask is, where have you found? And it's amazing how they have found it on their own or created it.
Yes.
They now are going and realizing, hey, I can create. If I have created, I can do this.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
it's fun. And to start to see the siblings, because now I've got students that started it that have
Yep.
long since gone, and now their little brother is sitting around the table, and I'm like,
That's
oh
so
my
fun.
gosh.
It
this
is really cool because that has been going on the longest, really.
Yeah.
Because you had a pilot spring, you piloted that program before we ever even, and we'll get back to that
the
event.
first. Yeah, that was really the first thing.
The very
that-
first thing that kind of
yeah.
really went live
Yep.
was Students for Students. And now those kids, they're not kids, there's young adults, are now juniors, is that right, in college?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's been, 4 years. It's wild since they
So
started
cool.
that. It's really, really neat. So the school comes to you. These groups are already starting. You're already like ripples of these efforts are already washing into that school.
Yep.
And you've been communicating with them about the need for, more interventions. And they come to you with these 2 days.
Yes.
And so you and these moms have already been sitting around, which, by the way, it's sooner or later, we need to have a podcast where we interview.
We need all the moms.
Yes, we need the
Yes,
moms
we
like
do.
this group that
It's
help
gonna
get
be
this thing going.
rowdy.
It would be
It would be
rowdy
rowdy.
because they are an amazing group
So
of
fun.
go-getter moms.
Yes, yes, they are. Because I remember being invited to that table with all of those moms and just like sitting there in awe for a long time before I felt like I needed to
this-
even say anything.
This was by no means like my thing.
Right.
This was a team effort that put this on. And there's some amazing moms that are
Yeah,
part of this
some very
and
cool
still
people.
part of it today.
Yeah,
So,
are still asking how they can lean in.
Absolutely.
Serve on the board, help us,
Yep.
figure out how to fundraise, whatever. They continue to all just like, how can I help? How
show
can I
up.
help?
They're showing up.
Just showing up. It's so cool. So you're all meeting and you start to have, what are these 2 days going to be like? And then kind of catch us up from there. Like, so you're given 2 days. You don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah, so we're given 2 days. We go to professionals and ask them what we should do.
Yeah.
Ask them what we should talk about. We really tried to get other people to speak into, which I think was very helpful. And then that's when you entered the picture. Enter Ed Williams. Because I knew that you could bring us all together. It would be a disjointed kind of, this speaker, this. I wanted it to be a day and an event. And I knew that you would do that really well. So you came into that first one and really hosted the whole thing, brought it all together, created a flow with it. And it was amazing.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
Thinking back, because one of the cool things too was you had asked me to meet, and I think because again it's COVID, so I was meeting via Zoom, but there were a couple of your teams, even Students for Students, that were trying to figure out how to scale and think about how to create curriculum or do a training for small group leaders, like how do we equip these upperclassmen to lead a group. And so I had been running the student ministry at the church where we all met, and kind of had, with Kelly's help and a whole team of volunteers, been putting on weekly events for a long time at that point, and camps and all of that. And so we were always thinking through, how do we make this meaningful and fun from the beginning through to the end so that it's all kind of connected and it's not just, to your point, kind of all these separate little things. And so we just started thinking, okay, students like this, they hate this, they want to do this, they don't want this. And we just started thinking, how can we make this fun? Like, what do the games look like? How do we surprise them and wow them as they're showing up and exceed their expectations? And so we started talking like games, prizes, what food can be there. You know, we're going to throw chicken sandwiches, like breakfast sandwiches in the morning or whatever. And I know some of the moms around your table were like, wait a second.
Well, we didn't ever been done before. This is not the way that events happened
at that school or in a lot of
schools.
Sure.
I mean, I knew that it would look different, but that's what would draw students in and get them to buy in, is those other things.
Sure.
And then having great communicators that were helpful and relevant, which is what we did.
Yeah. So we tried to break it all up, I remember, so there wasn't as much lecture as it was, more interviews and panels and things like that, and students having the opportunity to get in groups and process or have Q&As. And so I remember, that we got done with those 2 days, and it was outside. It was at what's called the Coach's Pavilion under this cover. And it was really fun. It was really hot, but it was really fun. We had great weather, thankfully, and we did yoga. And they heard, about like eating habits and things like that as they go to school. We had a local professor and psychologist, Dr. Harper, right here in town, who came and spoke because she had done her doctoral research on the transition to university and kind of got up and really scared the shit out of the kids. Like, it was one of the last sessions we did, I remember, but intentionally, as that was her like grab their attention moment, is she got up and she came walking in like she does in her her psych classes. And like, all right, everyone, put your put your phones away. I need your laptops open. Make sure blah blah blah. Take out your syllabus. You'll notice that and she just kind of just went at them, and these kids just started leaning back, and their eyes just started getting bigger and bigger. and then she's like, okay, and then she kind of let up, and everybody was like, and exhaled, and then she kind of got into it. But don't be surprised. That's what it's going to be like. And then she took them through things to do in the first 24 hours, like when they arrive on campus, the first few days, the first week, how to find community, how to manage your time. It was a lot of information, but it was so pointed, and that felt need was being met. Yes. It was one of the coolest sessions. I think that the yoga session and that one were a couple of the coolest that we did that first 2-day event. And then because I wouldn't say we're not scared of, but we were a little scared of getting feedback, but not scared so much that we don't ask for feedback after each of our events. Yes. So we're always like, oh gosh, how did the students feel about this? We think we have them figured out to some degree. So we gave them like surveys. And do you remember like what was kind of the gist of those surveys after that event?
So when the second day was over, we put a survey in their hands, and we wanted to know what they thought. Yeah. And it was very interesting to see so many of them. The feedback that we got was, this was amazing, but why we're so frustrated by the fact that we've never had any of these conversations before, and it's literally the last day that we are on campus of high school, and you are finally telling us these things that we wish we had been having conversations about over the last several years. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that hit us as a team as we sat down and read that. It was one of them even said, this is a slap in the face. And I remember us sitting down around the island processing, and that it was that conversation that led into the launch program. We basically said, okay, like these students are asking for this. How do we get it in front of them sooner? Mm-hmm. So we, as a team, we decided, hey, let's go to the admin of this school and see let's give them this feedback and see what they say. And we did. We sat down and we said, here's what the students said. And they said, okay, we'll give you 6 sessions with our seniors next year. And literally we were like, okay, like,
what?
Awesome.
I guess we're doing doing this.
What the hell are we going to do with 6 of these?
Yeah. I mean, that is where For Students as an organization really was birthed. Right. I think we left that table and we're like, okay,
we're doing this.
We're going to do this.
And we've got 2 initiatives. We've got this small group thing, and now we've got to invent this going into schools and putting on events thing. Yep. As well as they told us, and we're going to give you 2 days again at the end of the year, the next year. So, that's when you kind of said, hey, by the way, I know you're thinking about going back to teaching. I was stepping away from my job, at working for a church, and I was going back to teaching. Had a job already, actually was offered a job. and you said, hey, don't take that job. Come work for me. And I was like
literally in one night.
Literally
Yes.
in
You were like,
one night.
just
Yes.
don't say anything and have dinner with me tonight, right?
Yes.
It was, well, the
And he'd already
problem
said
was
something.
I had been offered
that's
the
right.
job
And
on
you
the
already
spot.
said yeah.
And I said yes. Because it
Awkward.
was at this school where my daughters were attending. And so, or this cluster, because one of them was in high school, one of them was in middle school. And I'd already said, yes, this sounds great. I'll work for you. But then Whitney, because she's a trained coach, and so she kind of asked me about some deeper questions. What do you really want? How long do you see yourself teaching, et cetera? And it was true. It was great because I was like, well, yeah, it's funny you say that. I'm good at this. I remember enjoying it. I loved teaching when I left to go work, for Ridge. It was like, teaching was great, but I was just like, man, you mean I just get to have meaningful conversations all the time with like kids and families? That's my favorite part. And then it just, as the decade went on and I was ready, it was just time for me to go. And I was like, I'll go back to teaching. But we recognized like, it's not what I want to do most. I think I'm going back to it because it's safe and I will have a paycheck and, benefits and all of that. So yeah, I had to call the principal back and say, I've been offered this other job that I actually think is just a better fit for me right now. And so I came on September 1st, 3 years ago, and officially started on, working with Whitney. And then it was me and all the moms at this island and me listening in and kind of just saying, well, yeah, but what about, and kind of some what abouts, but really learning what's the culture, what are you trying to do, help really clarify a vision and a goal. And then it would be, they'd all leave and Whitney and I would sit there for like 2-3 more hours and just trying to figure out, okay, what does this even look like? How would we do this? Who do we know that would be great to come in and help us make these events even better and help us be think of all the details that neither of us think of. And
Enter Kelly.
Enter Kelly, who was working
like,
part-time,
this is me,
somewhere.
right?
Yeah. And it's like, and so she just started kind of showing up and volunteering and helping us with some of the details.
Yep.
And then this team just started growing. And so here we are now 3 years in.
Yep.
Really quickly, I'd love to hear from the two of you. What do these events look like for anybody listening, student listening, parent listening? What do these events look like? Let's talk about that really quickly. And then what are we up to right now? Where is the organization gone in 3 years?
Kelly.
Our events are really fun. We normally have about an hour during like an activity period, and so they all come in, and we want to have fun first. Like we always have some sort of game that connects loosely with what our content is for the day, so that it can kind of tie back to that later on. So we have fun, and then we bring in a communicator, a professional, or do some sort of panel interview or something as far as content goes. And then we break them up into small groups, and about 8 to 10 of them sit in a circle and kind of digest what they've heard, if it's applicable, what they learned, all of those things through each other, which is really, really fun. And meaningful, because it's not, you're just being talked at and you need to accept this as truth. You can kind of process with your peers, with the people that are around you.
Yeah, I think we never call them assemblies because people have something comes to mind immediately when you think of school assembly.
Yep.
And it's usually not awesome. But we try and make it super engaging and fun. And then off the top of your head, like which events really stick out to you, like topics wise? Because we're not mental health professionals, but we have this incredible advisory board of all these therapists, psychologists, physicians, students that are here in town that help inform our content and even our programming, the way we do it. We're always trying to be like, we're grown-ups, we're trying to communicate well to teens and to communicate powerfully and helpfully, to teens. What do we need to be talking about? But which events out of the ones that our board has helped us create, like really stick out to you? Like what topics?
I mean,
my favorites.
Yeah, I would say conflict resolution, I think is a really, I think it's great because it is so engaging in so many ways.
And kind of hits every personality.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not, this doesn't apply to me.
Right.
Everybody.
Everyone, even playing field, understands what it's like to be in conflict and when
You
it
are
goes
so
well
right.
and when it goes poorly.
Right.
Yes. That's one of my favorite. And the temperaments. We do one around temperaments at the beginning of the year with them.
What is a temperament? What's temperament?
Really like your natural predisposed way that you're going to interact with the world around you.
Yeah.
Am I right?
No. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, that
was
didn't mean to be a quiz.
That's
I wasn't trying to
gold
quiz you. I was just saying, like, in case someone doesn't know what a temperament
is there some language I'm
No
supposed
quiz.
to use around this?
That was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, but it's fun to see the light bulbs go off with these students.
Yeah. Well, when you know yourself, you understand why you made these choices or why this relationship isn't going well. Like it's really important to know why you responded in this way, and
and know your friend that's
things.
sitting over there that, oh, well, you are like the opposite temperament of me. No wonder we battle about these things
or why I
in
talk
this
all
way.
the time and you just sit in there quiet all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
For sure.
we obviously, with help of amazing, again, professionals here in town, developed, I think, the thing that's really, even though it's the toughest one,
Yes.
we have created a suicide prevention training. So that how to recognize when you have a peer or a loved one, someone you know who is in a mental health crisis, what to ask and how to ask boldly, like if they're thinking of taking their own life or hurting themselves. And then who to refer them to. We help them name who are those people and then how to stay involved appropriately afterwards. And that's a really heavy one, but we always approach it with such hope. Like we're equipping you so that if you're ever in this position, you will know exactly what to do. You don't need to be afraid to ask, are you thinking about suicide? Because you know what to say or do if they say yes. And so that's a tough one, but it's like that's the one I think that we walk away. Like it's like, yeah, that was hard. But man, I'm so proud that we did that. Yeah. And I think the kids, even though it's heavy, it is hopeful, and we never approach it as like we're not trying to bring you down. We're trying to equip you. But I think they feel better knowing that they have this under their belt, this skill as they walk the rest of the halls that year and then go away.
And I think they're using it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, in fact, I know they're using it because I hear the feedback.
Yeah. And the teachers who sit in, we've heard from instructors who said, I used this a couple weeks ago. You guys were here last month. Like a week and a half later, I ended up having this conversation based on what I learned in this training today.
Yep.
So I don't know. It's really cool. It's really helpful.
Really cool.
We're so pumped about it. So we started in with 5 events at that school, and we're still doing that. 3 years. This is our 4th year now starting. We've already had our first event. We've got another event there in 2 days as we're recording this. 4 years later, we're still in that school. Where else? What else are we doing?
We've branched out. We're now at Union Academy in Union County out there, and Greystone out. What's the place?
Stanley
Stanley County, Meisenheimer, North Carolina. Yeah, Greystone Day School.
And have a few others on the horizon.
Yeah, we've been in talks with other schools and as you heard at the beginning, even though we're still figuring this out, like we're now starting. So we're in these 3 schools. We've been in the Latin for this our 4th year, Union Academy. This is our 3rd year with them. We started 1 year later. They asked us to come. And then Greystone, this is year 2 with them.
Yep.
Starting our 5th year, this will be the 5th year of the start of Students for Students, which is crazy because that started the spring before anything else. And talks with other schools. And now we are just had our first citywide event. So where we're trying to provide some of this curriculum to any kid that wants to come in Charlotte, junior or senior, in these neutral locations. And we did our first one Sunday night.
Our team is small, and we just don't have the bandwidth to go into every school. But the major goal of this organization is that every student that can hears this content and feels better prepared and has the community around them. So we just kind of brainstormed, how do we get this in front of a bunch of people? And that's where Citywide was born. And so I'm super excited to see where that goes and how that evolves and get the word out and all of that stuff. That's like a new adventure. I'm really excited about that one.
Yes, we're super excited about that.
Yep.
And then this, like a podcast. So we've launched Citywide here in the fall, and we've just launched this podcast here in the fall of 2024. And then we have more exciting news about some stuff that's happening in May we'll get into another time. But is it possible that 4 Students is going to another city? What? So we'll maybe have some announcements later on, because it is. But we'll announce
Spoiler
that a little
alert.
bit later. But yeah, so it's wild. Whitney D, out of pain has come so much purpose. And it's an interesting thing. I was talking to somebody about this. We will never quite know the impact. We'll know how many students we've been in front of, how many conversations we've had, how many students participate. We'll have those numbers, but we'll never have the data to show the impact that this program has had, how many lives have been saved, how many relationships are different, how differently people think about themselves and maybe the people around them. But we know it's good work. Like, I'm so pumped we get to do this.
Yeah. Me too.
Thank you.
It is a blessing.
It is. And thank you so much for being on here and walking through such heavy, heavy things with us. And thank you that you are a helper and that you have taken this unbelievable loss and decided, I'm going to use it to make sure that fewer people experience it.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
That's the hope.
It's cool. Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.